little while now. Would you like to tell us about what you're going to do next?
Yeah, so this morning we were talking about art balancing supply of the nature with the need of the man. But actually I will go back to the words from Andre, who just pointed out two very important things. He demonstrated a complexity of developing one technology that can use hydrogen. And this is needed when you build entire supply chain. We need users of hydrogen that will be able to use, and it takes time and so many efforts and so many companies. So I would like to congratulate to this company because they are not just from this region, but they are really global pioneers and are setting the standards so that we could learn from them a lot. Another aspect what he mentioned was that disruption is happening usually from the smaller projects. I would say also from the smaller regions. Also that's why, most likely why the first transnational hydrogen valley happened here. So these are just some symptoms that we can learn that maybe we are on a good path.
My name is Werner. I'm a former banker. I'm from a country which is called Lowlands. I met Alex working on a project in Namibia where I was looking for a way to get the solar energy from Namibia, which is very cheap because the sun is shining, to Europe. And I didn't know why, because I understood if you put a solar panel but the sun is always shining, you have simply more revenue. And as an ex-banker, I understand that. But now I had a problem because I had to bring it to Europe. And then I met Alex. And then he said, I've got a solution. I've got a solution for the transport and the storage of this energy. Putting the energy in a can and bringing it to Europe. And he said, but then in Europe, you have a next problem, Bernard. So, yeah? Yes. You need to do distribution. I've got the downstream lined up. And I thought, that's more than I hoped for. So we started to work together. And in this process, I met Asaf.
My name is Asaf Sayada. I'm the CEO of HydroX, the startup which is developing this disruptive hydrogen storage and transportation technology, and including this machine that you've seen outside, which is the opportunity for us to show you that hydrogen is not only about PowerPoint presentations, it's actually something that you can touch today, and this is what we're going to show you together with Werner today.
If you go to work in a startup, in a scale-up, in doing something for the environment, it's all nice and well. But if inherently the business case is only dependent on subsidies, I think I'm wasting my time. Because now you have to fight the capitalistic system. And that's a very strong, very difficult battle. Because this is what I think E-Cubes will deliver. Today, we can do 7 euros per kilo. You don't believe it? It's standing out there. The first hydrogen to this region is standing outside of this conference room. It's already there. It's relatively high, and it depends a little bit how you calculate, because you do only a few kilos. It depends a little bit how you calculate. But this is what we can do right now. But the market is not at 7. So we need to do other things, and I think we can do 5 in a reasonable short time frame. And we also can go to 3. And why is 3 relevant? Because 3 means it is competitive with fossil fuel. And I will show you exactly how. The first step, which is basically as a benchmarking, I use the fossil fuel and I use the ammonia, because most of the projects of hydrogen are actually, if you look at long-term transportation, based about ammonia. Ammonia, I don't know if everybody knows ammonia, but ammonia, if you inhale it, you die. If you put it in a factory in Beirut, it may explode. Right? If you were to put it on a vessel and you ship it to Croatia, and there's a problem with the vessel, you can forget about your tourism industry. ammonia is simply not fit for purpose. Why? Because inherently ammonia is toxic. So I put it in over here, but actually ammonia is completely irrelevant. Because if something is not fit for purpose, it doesn't matter how expensive it is. What is relevant is the discussion we had yesterday with Daniele. The only relevant thing is what happens today. And what happens today is fossil fuel. If hydrogen can be at the same price as fossil fuel, now you have a business case. I think you need to do three things. The first thing is the carrier. Ammonia is not a good carrier. It's not a good way to catch the sun where the sun is shining or the wind is blowing and put the energy in a can, store it and transport it, because it's dangerous. Right? So you have to find something for the carrier. The second step in this whole process is that the production of hydrogen needs to scale to get economies of scale. Right? If you do 10 megawatt, that's not going to be scalable. Yes, it's going to be scalable, but it's not enough to get economies of scale. So you have to make it big. You have to make it big in places where the sun is shining and the wind is blowing. Initially, we don't do that. I think by 2027, 2028, we can be in this fourth column. Which is good, because if the price of green hydrogen today is around €5 per kilogram, what it says over here is that it is feasible without subsidies. That's interesting, because now I'm on the hook. I'm an ex-banker. Now I start to believe in this. I start to believe that you have a way to decarbonize and keep the feet in Amsterdam dry if you do hydrogen and you don't have to fight the capitalistic system as we know it. It just fits in. And if you then do the optimization, because initially you don't have everything in the supply chain ready, you also need to get economies of scale in your transportation. That means tankers transport rather than container transport. Because now you have economies of scale. And this brings down the cost of transportation to, well, €1 per kilogram. To do this, this is an entire new supply chain. So if you are very good at part of the supply chain, and therefore dependent on other parts of the supply chain, and you are ready, and your neighbors are not, what happens? I call it you're stuck in the sand. You're not going to get anywhere because you have this interdependency across the entire supply chain. So what we need is a coordination across the supply chain. And that's exactly what E-Cubes does. And therefore it addresses upstream, midstream, and downstream. And with that, the financing component. So the three parts, three numbers that I showed in the graph with the numbers, those are the parts that need to be addressed, and those are the steps along the journey that we are taking to make this happen. Now where do we start? Where do we stand today? The first hydrogen is out here. It's in these containers just outside the room. This is happening now. There's two ways, and I come afterwards to that in a little bit more detail. You have the upstream on the left-hand side. That's the production of the hydrogen from solar and wind, whatever you want actually, as long as it's green. Then you bring it to a black box, that is a converter. Now you can do two things. If this is local, you have a storage component, so you have the upstream is the summer and the downstream is the winter. It can also be intercontinental. That means the upstream, the production is far away, and then the downstream is over here. So there's either a transportation component or a storage component. That's the midstream. Then you have a reconversion again, and then you can use the hydrogen for whatever purpose you need it. Whether it's aviation, whether it's steel, whether it's cement, it doesn't matter. It's hydrogen.
If hydrogen economy is an economy, we need it to be economical to be able to really implement projects. So we're all working on projects with regulations and safety compliance and very ambitious programs. But today it doesn't work. It doesn't work because the hydrogen is much too expensive. The point is that when you actually analyze why hydrogen is so expensive, you realize that the vast majority of the projects, actually the problem is with the cost of storage and transportation. The majority of the tens of millions of tons of hydrogen which are expected to be produced on our planet will be actually consumed thousands of kilometers away and many months after its production. And the result is that storage and transportation becomes really crucial in the new hydrogen economy. It was not the case with the gray hydrogen. Okay? Now, the challenge is that the conventional technologies, and even the more modern ones which have been developed in recent years, are completely unadapted to this new hydrogen economy. Why? Because, number one, they all require very extreme conditions of temperature and of pressure. So you need either very high temperature, or very low temperature, or very high pressure, and therefore you need a lot of energy to operate them, which make all these technologies extremely energy inefficient, and more important, very expensive OPEX-wise. But on top of it, all these technologies use, so I'm talking about compression, liquefaction, ammonia, and even the liquid organic hydrogen carriers, which you probably know, some of you at least. Again, also these technologies use toxic, flammable, explosive materials, at least two of these three, all of them, and therefore, as a result, they're all very cumbersome and hazardous as a supply chain. This is why all hydrogen projects are very complicated to set up. It takes years sometimes to get the permits and to really handle them efficiently. But on top of it, it means that they're all very expensive capex-wise, because you need to invest a lot in the infrastructure, in the equipment, to make it relatively safe. Okay? So they're all very expensive, too expensive OPEX-wise, CAPEX-wise, and very hazardous, complicated, cumbersome to handle. So this is not scalable. So I think that today the hydrogen market, which is at a kind of a crossroads, understands that we need to reinvent this space, and this is exactly what HydroX is doing. So HydroX is in a journey to drive the cost, and again, it's all about the cost. We're in the journey to drive the cost of hydrogen storage and transportation to below $1 per kilogram. Okay? So, how do we do that? We do that through a disruptive technology which relies on a catalytic and circular reaction. I will not, at this hour of the day, get into the details of the chemistry. But the bottom line of it is that this technology enables us to store and transport hydrogen into this liquid. This liquid is exactly, by the way, it's exactly the same liquid which you see here on the picture and which you have outside this room, in this machine, one of those tanks. By the way, we've been able to bring this machine with those tanks, with this material, with this salt and so on, into this hotel without asking for any authorization. So no handbook, no process, no regulation, nothing. Because those materials are completely non-toxic, non-flammable, and non-explosive. It means that we reduce the regulation to almost nothing. We compliance, safety maintenance, and so on. But it mainly means that we reduce the capex cost of hydrogen storage and transportation to very, very low level as compared to all the other technologies, which again have at least the toxic, flammable, explosive part. And this technology overall, both the charging of the hydrogen and the discharging require actually close to ambient conditions. So very different from the extreme conditions that I mentioned before with the other technologies. Actually, the charging required 35 degrees and 10 bar, so again, very easy to achieve conditions. And the discharging of the hydrogen from the liquid requires only 50 degrees and actually atmospheric pressure. So this is very easy to achieve conditions. All in all, it requires a tiny amount of energy to be operated. All in all, it's a little more than 2 kilowatt-hour per kilogram of hydrogen. For those of you who are either bankers or specialists, it means 94% energy efficiency. And just for the sake of comparison, if you compare that to other startup technologies, 94% energy efficiency. And it means that as compared to other startups, for example, playing in this domain and trying to address the same challenge, they typically require 13, 14, or even 40 kilowatt-hour per kilogram of hydrogen, and again, it's for the round trip. But what is really important to understand is that this is the very small energy requirement for the charging and the discharging in the middle, and meaning during the storage period or the transportation. No matter how long is the storage, it could be months, the cost remains flat. We need to maintain no special condition during the storage period. So even if we're talking about long-term storage, this cost remains very, very low. I would say that again, we have this safety competitive advantage, non-toxic, non-flammable, non-explosive, which leads to mainly to a capex cost reduction, and we have these conditions which are close to ambient, which are very far away from the extreme conditions required by the other technologies, which leads, I would say, almost linearly to an OPEX cost advantage. Bottom line, today, we are working on driving the cost of hydrogen storage and transportation to below $1 per kilogram. This is to compare with the $7 per kilogram, which are typically required by other technologies. And again, this is the main component in many hydrogen projects when you look at the actual cost end-to-end. Today, you can get compressed hydrogen at very low cost, but it's for very small scale. So it's sometimes can be even below the top $1, in theory at least, but it's for very small scale and very short term. Whenever you go to larger scale and to longer term with all other technologies, you go and climb up very, very fast and very easily actually to sometimes to double-digit figures. And this is what we are addressing for both. This is what we're bringing to the market for both stationary storage and for transportation, and again, especially for long-term storage and for long-distance transportation. But you'll see concrete example of what we're doing now together with Incubus in the region in both use cases, which are more kind of PowerPoint. This you can touch it, you can smell it, you can do a live leakage. Okay, here we go. Okay, by the way, took it on a plane, and absolutely, I was in the House of Lords with this liquid inside, and you can also touch it. Oh, sorry. Okay, here you have a live leakage. Yeah. So please feel free.
What about if the temperature is minus 20 degrees centigrade?
No, we need to heat it only for the charging and for the discharging. In the middle, it can stay for months without maintaining any specific conditions. Only when we need to discharge it, then we need to raise to hit
minus 20?
Minus 20 is easy. Actually, this material is commonly used to de-ice wings of planes, actually, in airports. So we'll get that to an issue. I would say, to simplify, we're much better than compressed hydrogen. We're much lower than ammonia, which is probably the highest density. But most important, we're much cheaper than ammonia, even for long-distance transportation.
Kilograms of hydrogen per ton of
so for 1 kilogram of hydrogen, you need 36 liters of this liquid. So again, it's much better for 1 kilogram of hydrogen. So much better than compression, the standard 200 bar, for example, but much less than ammonia. But again, at the end of the day, the important point is how much does it cost? And even for long-distance ship transportation, and even compared to ammonia, which is probably the highest density, you'll see that in a minute, much cheaper. This is Australian research. Okay, we added only the HydroX figures. But those figures show that actually with any technology, except salt caverns, it makes absolutely no sense to store hydrogen for weeks, months long. Okay, and we all know that this is one of the main use cases we all want to implement. So we can be even cheaper on long-term storage than salt caverns. We're definitely very close to their cost, and you know that salt caverns are available in some places of the world, and most of them on the others they're not. Meaning where they are available, they're usually very busy.
So if you can get your solar panel at places where the radiation is much higher, your price of hydrogen drops. But then you have to ship it, and this allows shipping. This allows the model of long-term transportation lines replacing basically oil and gas by hydrogen. And what is funny, it's completely retrofittable. You don't need special port stuff. You don't need special vessels for ammonia. Just a small sidestep. Maersk, Danish sailing company, ordered 11 vessels for ammonia transportation. CapEx, 1.1 billion euros. What we do is we use standard tankers. Everything is standard because it's water. We know how to deal with water. So what we're doing is we have three conversations with three partners in upstream. One is in South Africa, that's a brownfield, that's handy, it's a bit expensive. That's why we saw at the beginning in this slide with the numbers, it gets to 4 euros, 4.5 euros, that kind of a kilogram. But they have already the electrolyzers in place. It's kind of handy, you just need to buy the hydrogen. We're done. You can use this, small scale, it's expensive, banker, don't like to pay very often a high price. But now we can build the supply chain, because we need to do a couple of steps to build them. Good. Next one, Oman, for the ones that recognize the flag. Oman is fantastic. Why is Oman fantastic? For 3 reasons. 1, high radiation, so solar cheap. 2, wind, fantastic. But wind and solar are not unique. Oman is something that makes it stand out. It has a ministry of hydrogen. Sorry? It's a ministry of hydrogen. And they wanted to come over here. Sorry? Yes. And the Ministry of Hydrogen is just arranging everything. So the implementation is much easier. That means you basically don't have to bother about how you do the solar and the wind and everything. You just do a PPA and you're done. And why is that? Because in Oman they've seen what Europe needs in terms of hydrogen. And they said, well, we read the regulation in Europe. And to qualify as green hydrogen, the grid needs to be 90% plus green. And now the grid is, of course, in Oman, very dirty. Well, I guess. So what do you do if you have too much money in Oman and a lot of space? You build a second grid. And that's green. And that's fantastic because the second grid is smaller than the bigger grid. So it's balancing automatically. So you're balancing intraday solar and wind. It's done by somebody else. This makes life much easier.
The main competition, obviously, in the market is ammonia. I think that probably more than 95% of the projects in the world are planning to ship ammonia over ship hydrogen over long distances using ammonia ships. Actually, some others have been considering liquefied hydrogen at some stage. I think that recently research showed that the cost of shipping with liquefied hydrogen is currently $30 per kilogram, and is expected to decrease to only $18 per kilogram. So completely by 2050, so completely out of target. So mainly the competition is for us ammonia. But as I said before, we, despite the fact that we need to transport significantly more weight and volume than ammonia, we'll be able to actually reduce the cost very significantly. We're actually more than 4 times cheaper than ammonia on the capex, and almost 4 times cheaper than ammonia on the OPEX, including on those specific routes to the North Adriatic Hydrogen Valley that Werner mentioned before. The reason for that are maybe three reasons. First reason is the energy efficiency. We are by far the highest energy efficiency in the market, and ammonia is probably the worst one. Up to 60% of the energy is wasted over time with ammonia in such use cases. The other reason is actually the equipment, the safety advantage which we have over ammonia, which is pretty obvious. But it means that all the equipment which we can use is much cheaper. We can use even plastic tanks, okay? And whether with ammonia, everything is, all the equipment is extremely expensive. In the tanks themselves, the terminals themselves are extremely, big bubbles, extremely expensive. So that's the second reason. The third reason is the fact that we can use this kind of oil tankers, for example. These ships, which are much larger and much cheaper than the typical small and dedicated ammonia ships which are required to use ammonia for hydrogen transportation. So the bottom line is that, again, we are bringing here exactly the cost disruption that the industry is waiting in order to bring this cheap or actually affordable ammonia production to the regions which need it in the steel industry, the gas industry, or whatever other off-takers in, for example, in the North Adriatic hydrogen region.
E-Cubes is also a member of the Slovakian, Ukrainian hydrogen valley. You think about it, what that means. Right?
Once again,
E-Cubes is also a member of the Slovakian, Ukrainian hydrogen valley. The story over here is seasonal storage, means big swimming pools filled with sparkling water. Green energy on demand. It's a battery. Right? Yes. Now you understand where the funding for that one will go from. Right? That's not difficult. What we discuss over there, I want to emphasize that the bottom of the page a little bit, is not small. It's not small. We're talking about 10 gigawatts, and we are talking about 2 million tons of hydrogen. This is 10% of the EU target, on which the former Dutch minister said, it is not possible. It is impossible to reach these amounts of hydrogen. It cannot. And what we say over here is we claim the responsibility for 10% of that target.